Yo people, welcome back to another video. I hope everyone is having a good day. Bad Batch Season 2, Episode 6. It was definitely an improvement from the last two episodes, and we can go back on track with the story. It starts out with Sid sending the group to sell some chain codes to a group named Axis. We then hear a Wookiee. I personally knew it was Gungi already because we all saw the trailer, and it was Gungi time. He was getting attacked by two members of the Axis group, and now everyone who has watched Clone Wars knows Gungi is from Season 5, Episodes 6 to 9, but Episode 6 in particular is the first time that we see him, where Ahsoka takes a group of Padawans to Ilum, so her and Yoda can watch the Padawans try to get their Kyber crystals as the next stage in their Jedi training. He was actually the second one in the group to find this crystal, but due to an icy situation, he had to wait the longest and learn about patience. It's a good standalone episode for anyone that hasn't watched it. It just shows that process that all the Jedi must take to first get their lightsaber crystal. So yeah, I definitely recommend it for anyone that hasn't watched it. It has a 3 or 4 episode arc as well, but it's a good standalone episode. Anyways, back to the Bad Batch, and we hear the Axis members talking about keeping Gungi because they're going to sell him. They're planning to sell him to a buyer. They start attacking Gungi, they start electrocuting him. Omega hears all the commotion, she sees what's happening. She starts shooting at the Axis members, tries to free Gungi, and then eventually Echo and the rest of the Bad Batch help out Omega and Gungi to escape. On board, we see that Gungi is scared of the Bad Batch, and it's obviously because he's scared of all clones now that he is a survivor of Order 66. And I was rubbing my hands, I was like, yes, we're going to get some flashback or some sort of story. But no, we got nothing. We got no flashbacks. We got nothing. He didn't tell us how he survived. And I'll talk about this more towards the conclusion of the episode. But all we get is that he's been on the run and he's been trying to get home back to Kashyyyk. Echo and Hunter start talking and they eventually decide to take Gungi back to Kashyyyk. It was actually good to be back on the planet for nostalgia purposes with Revenge of the Sith. And also because it ties in with Jedi Fallen Order. And interesting to note that back-to-back episodes where Fallen Order ties in must just be a coincidence. Throughout the episode, we actually see two different kinds of creatures. None of them are in Fallen Order, so I assume that different regions of the planet have different types of creatures. However, they do still have these spider-looking creatures. They are called Kinoths, I believe. And of course, the people making Fallen Order decided to give us the ugliest, creepiest looking spiders, slugs, and all of that shit. Throughout the episode, we see Gungi use his Jedi abilities and his knowledge as well. And it's good to see that he can still use his abilities. I know it's only been a few months, maybe nearly a year, since Order 66 at this stage. Anyways, as we go deeper into the jungle, it looks like the Empire has already started wrecking the village. But we find out that it's actually Trandoshans that have been mining Kashyyyk with the help of Imperial tanks, as well as capturing Wookiees. Just for a bit of context, the Trandoshans already have beef with the Wookiees. They're enemies because their planets share the same system, but the Trandoshans also treat the Wookiees as animals. They think they can just hunt these animals, quote unquote, and they get points for capturing them, for killing them, and all sorts, whatever they want to do with them. And even in the episode, we hear one of the Trandoshans tell the other that the dead Wookiee can be their trophy. In the Book of Boba Fett, we see that Chrysanthemum actually has no problem ripping the arm off of one of the Trandoshans. As it turns out, the Trandoshans were working for a commander called Venomore, and his name seemed very familiar to me, and when I searched him up, this is what I found. Venomore was supposed to appear in the Clone Wars, and was introduced in an arc that was unfinished, so knowing that information, it's good that they eventually managed to squeeze him in some way, shape or form. Anyways, Gungi takes out his lightsaber, he starts fighting, he saves the captive Wookiee, and the Bad Batch obviously help him out. And then some other Wookiees then take the Bad Batch and Gungi to their hideout, and Gungi is reunited with his tribe. We then find out the Trandoshans were working with the Empire, and they find the lightsaber marks left by Gungi, which means they know there's a Jedi around. The Wookiees then start worshipping or praying to the trees, as apparently Wookiees believe that the planet belongs to the trees, so they do this prayer worship situation as a way of talking to the trees. We then get the typical final battle. It's a pretty straightforward one, and the final showdown in particular is between Gungi and Venomore, in which Gungi, I'd say he wins because he destroys Venomore's flamethrower, but then the Kinoth spiders actually interfere before Gungi can do anything, and they start poking at Venomore, they start biting him. Eventually, it leads to them webbing up Venomore, kind of like the Frodo style. and they take him up and away, probably to eat him, or I don't know what they'll do, which is pretty humbling that the hunter got hunted. But yeah, the episode basically ends with the leader of the tribe saying a quote to Hunter in particular that I think is very on the nose with the foreshadowing of what will happen to Omega. The quote is that when the young ones leave, the trees weep. When they return, the trees sing. As this child has found his new home, perhaps one day we will all find a new path. And Hunter kind of just responds like, hopefully it's one away from the war, and the episode kind of ends. I think we will see by the end of this season Omega's final route. I do think there will be some darker times ahead for the Bad Batch. Maybe we may lose one or two of them, but it will be interesting to see where Omega ends up. Will she become a bounty hunter? Will she find Boba Fett? Who knows? Overall, it was a pretty cool episode in my opinion. I'd say it's probably the third or fourth best of the season. Definitely better than the recent two that we've seen. I think it was cool that the Bad Batch have come across a Jedi survivor and managed to get him home. This is like the minimum I expect to be getting from this series. The Bad Batch still doing things that affect the main storyline. Even if they're considered small or they're helping like a small character, it's still a pretty big deal. They helped a Jedi. They helped Kashyyyk fend off threats from Trandoshans and the Empire. None of this pod racing to save Sid from humiliation or looking for random treasure that eventually leads to nothing. Bin all of that. The one complaint I'd have is that I wanted to see more of how Gungi survived. It would be cool if he mentioned at least one of the other kids from the Clone Wars episodes that I mentioned earlier. I think they could have done more with that. Having said that, I can sort of understand why they didn't maybe explain the Order 66 thing, because they don't want to rinse and repeat having to explain how everyone survived or what everyone was doing during that time. It's kind of like Marvel with the whole Thanos snap situation. They don't want to overdo it. They don't do it for every character anyways, but I think for Star Wars it's a different story, because for Thanos' snap, there's a 50-50 survival rate. Like there's a 50% chance you get snapped or you survive. But in Order 66, it was like I don't know, less than like a 5% survival rate. So it would have been cool to see how Gungi survived, in particular what he had to do to survive, how he ended up on the Axis situation. And just because the odds are so slim, it would have added to his character, made him have more of a respected stance. Not that he isn't already, but it would have been a lot cooler for his character. Everyone's survival journey is different as well. It's not like the snap where everyone just vanishes. Everyone has kind of like a different way of how they survived. But yeah, overall, pretty cool episode apart from that. Pretty straightforward. Everything just made sense. It connected themes across the episodes. Hopefully we get more of these kind of episodes. More episodes like episode 3. Shout out to everyone that made it this far. I appreciate the support. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. I hope everyone has a good rest of the day, and I'll catch you in the next one.